So, good day. So, I'm gonna report to you the economic growth. So, first, let us define the term economic growth. So, what is meant by economic growth? Economic growth is a long-term expansion of a country's productive potential. So, meaning, we can identify that an economy has grown by by seeing its productive potential. If its productive potential increased, then we can say that an economy has grown. So, economic growth has two measures. So, the first is the short-term economic growth. So, short-term economic growth is measured by the annual percentage change in real nominal output. This is mainly driven by the level of aggregate demand, which is the C plus I plus G plus X plus M. So graphically, we can say that we have a short-term growth if the short-run aggregate supply shifts outward. So same thing in long-term growth. So long-term growth is shown by the increase in trend or potential GDP. So graphically again, we can identify that we have a long-term growth if the long-run aggregate supply shifts outward. So from there, graphically, we can easily identify that we have an economic growth. So the next one is the fiscal dividends. So what is meant by fiscal dividends? Fiscal dividends, it is the sustained GDP growth, boosts tax revenues, and provides the government with extra money to improve public services. So fiscal dividends, it is the dividends received by the government to improve public services, such for instance our education and health services or health care. So it makes it easier for a government to reduce the size of a budget deficit. So under fiscal dividends, we have investment. So if we have a higher production, the investors tend to invest more of their money. So if we have higher investments, it will rise the demand and output encourage. Um, Yun. Then next is the consumer and business confidence. Growth has a positive impact on business profits and confidence. A strong economy will help to persuade consumers and that the time is right and that is for them to make the right decisions on their major purchases. So growth also help protects the environment, such as innovations and research and developments. For example, nowadays the supermarkets and the groceries are using biodegradable and oxo-biodegradable plastic bags to help for environment. So there. And the next is the cycle of growth. So first, rising consumer demand. If the consumer demand is rising, the productions will tend to create more output. So if we have higher outputs, the investment will increase. Just like what I've said, if we have a higher production, the investors will tend to invest more of theirs, so that to have a higher production. Now, if we have a higher production, the wages will increase because of higher profits gained or earned or garnered. So from increased wages, then there the cycle. So next will be the ingredients of economic growth. So everyone is asking, so how can we attain an economic growth? So this is the ingredients of economic growth. First, there are two factors. First is the supply factors and the demand factors. The supply factors, it is the quality and quantity of natural resources, increasing in quality and quantity of the human resources, and increases in the stock of capital goods. So mainly in the supply factors is the improvements of our technology. So next is the demand factor. Demand factor, here involve the full employment of the resources is involved in, provided the aggregate demand will increase. So there. So we have also the advantages and disadvantages of the economic growth. So first, let's tackle the advantages of economic growth. So advantages of economic growth. So first, higher living standards. Of course, if our country has economic growth, it is easy for us to live, to have a higher living standard. So it because we have an increased income per head of population, so we can easily buy our needs or there. Next is the employment effects. So employment effects is the growth stimulates economic growth affects employment by stimulating more job to help people as they stay in the labor market. So if we have economic growth, of course more business will will grow. So um, the labor force will be needed. So there, many employees will be employed. So if we have the advantages, of course, we will have its disadvantage. So the first disadvantage of economic growth is inflation risk. So if demand rises ahead of aggregate supply, the scene is set for rising prices. So of course, if we have higher profits, that tend if the people have higher profits garnered, so the businesses will tend to increase the price of their products, resulting in inflation risk. So many fast-growing developing countries have seen high rates or inflation in recent years. So for example is India. So the next is working hours. Sometimes there are fears that a fast-growing economy places increasing demands on the hours that people work and can upset work-life balance. There, it can affect the working hours of the employees because of many jobs. So so the next is structural change. Although a growing economy will be creating more jobs, it also leads to structural changes and sometimes is a cause of structural unemployment. Structural unemployment can rise even though it appears that the country is growing because the labor force needs to be because the labor force needs to be occupationally mobile. So there. Economic growth also affects our environment. So uh, here are the environmental concerns regarding the economic growth, because when a country has an economic growth, it can also affect negative effects to our environment. So okay. First, some of the effects will be noise pollutions, air pollutions, and road congestions. So fast growth can create negative externalities, or for example this three. So increased consumptions of generic goods which damages social welfare. So it can also lead to a huge increase in household and industrial waste, which can again creates external cost for society. So so that's all for economic growth. Thank you.